And the 2-year-old boys at Churchill on Saturday afternoon for the Iroquois. Here's the field of 12 signed on. Ultimately, post-time favorite landed on tight 10 for Steve Asmussen. This was a horse that came in. Pedigree would suggest that 2 turns isn't an issue. From a speed figure standpoint, he was just substantially faster than everyone else in this field. The question always is, though, until they do go 2 turns, you never truly know if they're going to be able to do it or not. Certain things would suggest they should, but you never truly know. Ultimately, tight 10 did successfully navigate the 2 turns, but one horse was better than him. That horse, Cairo Cat. He gets the job done at odds of 17-1 for Ken McPeek and Brian Hernandez Jr. over your even money favorite tight 10, who runs second, and Pole Setter runs third for Florent Giroux and Brad Cox at odds of 7-1. Let's discuss Cairo Cat a little bit more. He is 2 of 3 lifetime, over $133,000 in career earnings, owned by Walking L Thoroughbreds LLC, trained by Kenny McPeek, bred by Clifton Farm LLC in Kentucky, ridden to victory by BJ Hernandez. And you see that pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. This is a son of Cairo Prince, out of a tail of the cat mare named La Belle Cat. 80 buyer speed figure for Cairo Prince. I thought this was a solid victory, an encouraging victory. I don't think it's one that you're running right now to say he's the favorite for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, even though it's nice to know that you have a victory at Churchill Downs, where the Juvenile will be this year. But it's more a matter of, I thought this was an effort that you can build off of. And even if, let's just say that the Juvenile is not the day for him and he doesn't shine that day, at least to me, the way that he moved makes me think that there's some upside here. This could be a nice little horse. He did have a very good trip down on the inside, saved the majority of the ground in here. But at the same time, he did make a nice mid-race move. He traveled very comfortably. He was very professional, which, again, at this point in their careers, that's not a given that these horses are going to handle things very, very easily and very well. Brian Hernandez kept him down on the inside for the longest time, waited, and finally angled out into the clear, just over heels of Cairo Prince, over tight 10, and he went on and got the job done professionally, galloped out very well. I thought this was an encouraging effort from Cairo Cat. When you take a look of the top 4 finishers with their come-home times, Cairo Cat comes home in 31:15, tight 10 31:38, Pole Setter 31:81, and Tobacco Road 31:97. Again, very encouraging effort from Cairo Cat. Sounds like the next stop for him will be the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Tight 10 has some things to iron out. From a pace standpoint, this was a race where it doesn't look like it was a fast pace, but when you look and see where the other horses that were up there prompting it ended up finishing, maybe you want to give tight 10 a few extra bonus points here. But the bigger thing for him that he needs to iron out, he earned a 79 buyer, by the way. He's just still very green. You saw him swap leads down the lane, and I don't think that's a matter of him getting tired. I think that was just a matter of him just kind of figuring things out and not really knowing what the heck's going on. I thought it was a good effort. Again, one that you can build on. I think the top 2, and even the top 3, we'll talk about Pole Setter in a moment. The top 3, it really feels like, I don't think right now you're dealing with finished products just yet. I think there is room for improvement, and guess what? There has to be room for improvement if you're thinking about a race like the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Or, let's be honest, many of these folks, they're looking at it saying, my horse runs well at Churchill Downs. Yes, the Breeders' Cup is the immediate goal, but the real goal for any of these horses, for any of these connections, they've got their eye on a bigger prize. They want to have a good horse for the first Saturday in May in 2019, looking at the potential of a Kentucky Derby contender. I think the top 2 are very nice. I think the top 3 are quite nice. Pole Setter, in the grand scheme of things, he tired pretty badly down the lane, but you've got to give him some extra credit because he carried a ton of ground in this spot. He was basically 4 or 5 paths off the rail throughout, and rounding the far turn, he actually put in a little bit of a threatening bid. He rolled up. He was only about a half length off the pace there for a moment. I thought Florent Giroux rode him as well as he could have, considering that draw and the way that everything shook down. Make that move, and hopefully you can sustain it. Instead, that whether you want to say it was a little bit of the early move or it was a combination of that plus the ground loss, he flattened out a little bit, but it was an encouraging enough move over to the dirt surface for this horse, and he has good connections behind him. Pole Setter is an interesting one going forward as well. I think the top 3 are all quite good. The rest of the field, not really all that sold on. I suppose maybe you want to give a couple of them the benefit of the doubt, but to be honest, to me, this was a race of, let me look at the top 3. I guess if you want to throw Tobacco Road in there, but it really, to me anyway, felt like the top 3 were pretty clearly the 3 best horses in this race from the way that they ran anyway. Cairo Cat, very professional for a 2-year-old. That was very, very encouraging. The 80 buyer, not bad. That works if you think you're going to get a 5 to 10 point improvement. Come Breeders' Cup time, that puts him right there as far as the juvenile is concerned. Tight 10, he needs to iron some things out professionally, but I think he has ability. I don't think there's really any denying that. And then pole setter, considering how wide he was and that little bit of an early move rounding the far turn, thought this was a good effort as well. Something that can certainly be built upon. You would have to think that the top connections in here, the top 3 finishers, they've got to be having their eye on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Sounds like that's immediately where Cairo Cat goes. But you also have to think in the back of their mind, they're hopeful, fingers crossed. You could be looking at contenders the first Saturday in May in 2019. First things first, though. Sounds like they're all going to try to get to a race like the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Cairo Cat gets the job done in this year's Iroquois down at Churchill Downs, the 10th race on Saturday with an 80 Beyer speed figure.